Welcome everybody. This specific talk is about the homologation and legal requirements for connected and automated vehicles. And before starting with the contents and with the discussion, let me first introduce who will be participating today. I know it's not so polite, but I will start with myself as I am the first one to speak. I am the moderator today, and my name is Carlos Luján. I am industrial engineer from the Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya, UPC, in Barcelona, and I have been working for A+ IDIADA from 2007 as homologation engineer, so more than 18 years experience in homologation. And currently, I am the head of the department for the homologation of connected and automated vehicles. I take part in the different regulatory forums, including, for example, the group of experts on automated and autonomous vehicles from UNEC, it's GRBA, participating as technical expert as part of the Spanish delegation. And I am also responsible within A+ IDIADA of all the R&D activities which are related to regulatory requirements for the new technologies associated to connected and automated vehicles. Today with me, we have two experts from different sectors or different stakeholders related to the regulations for automated driving. First of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Cristina Galassi. She's Policy Officer at the Mobility Unit of the European Commission, the Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, known as DigiGrow. And she's leading the DigiGrow regulatory work on connected and automated driving. She's graduated in aerospace engineering at the University of Pisa, and she obtained her PhD in nuclear and industrial safety from the same university. Good morning, Maria Cristina. And then we will also have, representing the industry, Mr. Christian Merkt. He's the Director of EU Governmental Affairs, Digitalization and Automated Driving. And he has been appointed for the CCAM chair in 2024. He joined BMW back in 1999 and has since held several positions such as Senior Expert Consumer, Protection Vehicle Safety Asia, with corresponding strategy of vehicle projects, including coordination of research of passive and active safety projects. In the period 2011-2014, he was representative of the BMW Group Research and Innovation Center to the EU institutions and supported various initiatives of electromobility, ITS, and digitalization in the automotive sector. From 2006, he has been a homologation engineer for EU vehicle type approval of various BMW models, so we have a similar background on this aspect. And before that, from 1999 to 2006, he worked at the BMW plant in Munich in the area of environmental protection and occupational safety. So you have seen we have very relevant actors today to discuss about this topic of the regulatory framework and the gaps that have been identified for the deployment of the connected and automated vehicles. Before getting into the contents themselves and the discussion, let me briefly introduce the FAME project. As I said before, this talk is part of the engagement activities of the FAME project, which is a European-funded project with several objectives, like the establishment of an European framework for CCAM testing, development of a common evaluation methodology, development also of a CCAM test data space, the engagement of the stakeholder network, as this activity is part of these engagement activities, and also the enhancement of the EU-wide knowledge base, where all the relevant information related to automated driving is present. This can be seen in this nice picture, in which we can see all of the activities of this same project, but also, and most importantly, you can check this website, connectedautomateddriving.eu, where you will be able to find all the relevant information with regards to the FAME project, and also you will have access to the knowledge base. As part of the activities of FAME, one of the activities I mentioned before is this European framework for testing on public roads, and one of the sub-activities of this task is the creation of these harmonized conditions and regulation, including the mutual recognition. This is the activity where my team at IDIADA has been deeply involved, to create or to propose recommendation guidelines for the allowance of this testing of the vehicles, automated driving vehicles in the public road. At the end, this is not an objective. Of course, this is an objective for the project, but this is not an objective for the industry, for the society, because at the end, our objective is the deployment of automated driving vehicles. But if we want to reach there, we need some tools that will allow us reach this target. And these tools include this national legislation for automated driving vehicles open road deployment, so the authorization for the vehicles to drive in the open road for commercial use, but also we need some type approval for those vehicles. So we have two main pillars that will allow us reach this deployment. If we move backwards in the process, we will see that in order to reach this vehicle type approval, we will need to go through this methodology that has been developed within the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, which includes several pillars for the assessment, including the assessment of the safety of the system, the homologation tests in the open road, and the track testing. So we see here another activity where we will need to bring the vehicles in the open road, and we will need to be able to test these vehicles in open environments. So again, in order to reach this intermediate target, we will need to have some national legislation in place that will allow this automated driving vehicle testing in the open road for the purposes of the type approval. But also, before the manufacturer is able to apply for the type approval, the manufacturer will need to validate their system, to validate their vehicles. And that will include also some validation in the open road. That means that there is also a need for this national legislation for automated driving vehicles open road testing for development purposes and for validation purposes by the manufacturer itself. In this same project, we have been focusing in the left part of the regulations, these regulations for prototypes, for testing the vehicles. Of course, and this is something that we may discuss today, there will be also a need for regulations for the deployment, which will be a next step. And the current situation is that for this prototype testing, there are already some ongoing activities like this subgroup on homologation testing from the European Union, the Motor Vehicle Working Group, which has created a harmonization and common guidance for these national requirements. This has been supported by the FAME project. We have been participating also in these meetings in order to align the messages. And also, on the other side, when it comes to the deployment itself, we see that there are already some initiatives at national level, but there is still a long way to go until we get a harmonized position in the European Union. On the other side, if we move into the homologation part, because at the end today we are talking about regulation, not only for testing, not only for homologation, we will see that homologation is also advancing. There are also some activities ongoing and some activities that have already been put in place, like, at different forums in UNECE and also in the European Union. In the case of the European Union, we have this regulation that was adopted back in 2022, the Regulation 2022/1426, which deals with different use cases. I think Maria Cristina will explain a little bit further on that during the talk today. And also at the UNECE level, we have this Regulation 157 on ALKS. And also there is some work in progress with regards to this ADS regulation, the Regulation on Automated Driving System, which is expected for 2026. This is everything as an introduction for the topic. I know I was a little bit quick on explaining that, but I think that the relevant part today is not the introduction, but the discussion that we will have with my colleagues today. So that being said, we know which is more or less the point of the discussion today. Let's move into the discussion itself. So I would like to start with Maria Cristina. And I would give her the floor so that she can provide us some insights, some information about the European Union Action Plan with regards to the regulations for connected automated vehicle, and which is a strategy that the European Union is following on this aspect.
Thank you very much, Carlos. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for indeed the FAME project for organizing this very interesting CCAM talks. I know this is not the first one, will not be the last one, and I'm sure that indeed the information shared within this webinar are very useful to all the community active on driving automation. So, as Carlos mentioned, I will start today providing you an overview of the Commission strategy laid down in the Automotive Action Plan for what concerns driving automation. So I will focus in particular on the aspects that are covered by my work and my team work at DG GROW. Of course, as you will probably already know, having read the action plan, there are many other actions that are relevant to other DGs. So next slide, please. As you probably already know, the action plan laid down 5 pillars, and the first one is dedicated to innovation and digitalization, and that's exactly where you will find flagship actions related to development and deployment of automated vehicles. So we are indeed facing very important twin transition, green and digital part. In the digital transition, we see more and more indeed relevance of onboard software on vehicles, but also artificial intelligence and connectivity and automation. And all these are aspects where we believe the European industry can indeed bring excellence, can excel and can compete at a very high level globally. So that's why in this action plan, we set a series of flagship actions to promote autonomous driving and also boost the European single market for autonomous vehicles. First of all, as also other experts mentioned, many other meetings we have to build the single market for driving automation. So let's have a look a bit more into the details in the next slide. So we have basically 3 streams of actions planned. Of course, as I said, before boosting the single market, we need to build it. And how are we going to do that? Well, the Commission, indeed, in this action plan, explicitly set the will and the commitment to harmonize at European level across member states, and in particular for what concerns the deployment. But we will start with something that is not indeed strictly linked to the deployment, but we see as propedeutic. This is necessary, as also Carlos mentioned, testing. Testing is needed for research, is needed for developing the technology, is also needed for the type approval evidence, and also the type approval testing. And that's why we committed to deliver rules, harmonized testing for access to harmonized testing on public roads across Europe, and we will start indeed issuing guidelines that, as Carlos mentioned, have been developed together with a contribution from the FAME project. And the idea there is to have member states recognize, acknowledge the importance of applying these guidelines, and also commit with an endorsement. So it will be a soft law, but still a voluntary applicable. But still, we want the commitment from member states to try in this first phase to apply these guidelines and see what works, what doesn't work, and where the ruling at a European level is needed. And then, of course, also the regulatory framework for type approval is very important. So Carlos gave some information about that. We already have some applicable regulations that allow access to the market of these new technologies. At European level, we allow driverless vehicles approval only under a limited number. So there's more serious scheme, which means 1,500 registrations per model per year. And so the first step on our side would be to work to remove this small serious limitation by 2026. And of course, we are also working to make our regulatory framework fit for driving automation. And then, meanwhile, all this work is going on. We also acknowledge the importance to allow quickly the technology on road, not just as testing, but as the first commercial applications. Because in Europe, we are very good with research. We have plenty of European funded projects and national funded projects, even at large scale. But we only have very, very few limited examples of commercial deployment. And so that's what we would like to boost and to facilitate, setting up at least 3 large-scale cross-border testbeds for autonomous vehicles starting in 2026. So I will possibly we will talk a bit more in the following of this session on the details of these actions. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you an overview of where we are. How our European type approval framework for driving automation is currently looking like. And here I also included the DCAS regulation. So this is not driving automation, but this is assisted driving. But why it is important to mention? Because we see more and more of the trend, many players moving from lower levels of automation gradually to higher levels of automation. So we understand the systems are different, of course, regulations are different, but they are all part of the same, let's say, framework of the same digitalization transition. And then they also face sometimes the same issues concerning, for example, testing. This is also a bit cumbersome to test DCAS systems across Europe. So that's why we are considering all these regulations together, all these different systems, different levels of automation together, to have a bit a systemic overview of what is needed and how we can move faster on all fronts. But again, I suppose we will have opportunity to discuss more in the details next. So next slide, please. And here are the main actions where we are actively working and where we have quite ambitious timelines. So you saw in the previous slides, I mentioned 2026 for most of the actions. So we are working to move to large series, as I said, removing the small series limitation. And this will be for 2026, starting this year with automated valet parking already. Then we have indeed the work ongoing at the United Nations to issue a United Nations regulation for global harmonization, covering the type approval of all automated driving systems, so level 3, 4, and 5. And then we have also been working on the guidelines for harmonized access to testing for both driver assistance systems and automated driving system technologies. That was what I mentioned before. And then we are having a dialogue with member states, and we will also move to some more concrete action towards the harmonization of the deployment that is also very much needed. And we already started working on the concept to set up these test beds, cross-border large-scale test beds, that will also be associated with regulatory sandboxes to facilitate and speed up a bit the commercial deployment also in Europe. So that will be all from my side as an introduction, and I look forward to continuing the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maria Cristina. So now it's the turn for Mr. Christian Merkt. Well, I think you have already seen what the European Commission proposes, what they can offer to the industry and to the society. So I would like to hear from your side, how do you feel about this strategy? Which are the gaps that you identify, and in which areas do you need that there should be a bigger effort or a different strategy from the authorities? So please, Christian.
Okay, can you see my screen now properly?
No, you have to share your presentation.
Okay, I tried to actually. Sorry.
In the meanwhile, let me say that the Q&A section is already open, so don't wait until the end of the talk to start with the questions, because I would like to have this talk to be very, very active, and I would appreciate if some of the questions are already available during the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, hang on a second, sorry. So, okay, do you see the screen now? Should be
Yeah,
fine.
now we see it.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone. And also from my side, thank you very much for being invited to this FAME live talk on a very important topic, also from the side of the industry. And well, yes, regarding the action plan, I think it's widely, highly appreciated from the industry side. And the action plan addresses the most urgent and relevant topics to really find adapted and new ways for the deployment of connected automated vehicles in Europe. Some of the topics are not new, are being discussed for a while. However, if we look on a global level, and I will touch upon this later, in the try of a competitive analysis, we see that there is now a really urgent time to really thoroughly evaluate what's going on around Europe in terms also of a 360 degrees assessment, and I would really like to see that happening also in the later steps of the alliance of CAVs and so on, because it's a highly complex topic, we all know, and there are many barriers still there. And this leads me to my next or first slide. Oops. Okay, so the first point is clear that we will or have to renew the European strategy, as Cristina mentioned, not only setting a new framework concept for regulation, but put a holistic focus on the topic. We have disrupted markets, we have difficult market accesses, the industry is struggling and so forth and so on. It's also touched a little bit here in let me check here my pointer. In the last bullet point, we have trade issues, we have disrupted supply chains and so on and so forth. So it's really high complex, and therefore I think this is an important topic to find an updated European strategy for the topic. Well, the second issue also mentioned by Cristina are the barriers to the national and regional permits. All these activities on pre-deployment testing are really important and valid. However, I think, we need really to look that we come to some harmonized and operational commitments from the member states and up to the local authorities, that really we can benefit from these methodologies, bringing them to real life. And as a third, the third topic touches a little bit the importance of the DCAS or driver assistance systems. They have now a big move for innovation, increasingly influenced by AI, what we observe worldwide, and this should be coming into a focus in the European discussion, because the benefits are quite obvious. We need to talk also about safety concerns and risks, but I think this is an important topic when we look on the competitive side globally. So this should be also addressed in the follow-up discussions on the UNECE working party on DCAS, to really thoroughly understand under these current boundary conditions the needs of the European industry. Well, single market was also mentioned for sure, and there are many elements to shape this European single market. We benefited for years and decades with our type approval scheme. This is a real strength of the European Union, and we have to come also for connected automated vehicles again to this state of the European single market. I think it's obviously for everyone. And here, just to highlight some of the topics of the fragmented national traffic rules. I mean, when we look at quite simple regulation on intelligent speed assist, we still have no real solution when a national or a member state changes the speed regulation, and we have to adapt the EU regulation, the appendix on the specific national law. We see that there is still some way to go to really have consistent and compliant methods also for the industry and for the consumers to comply with these regulations. And even more when we go beyond the ADAS technology, it will be very important to find appropriate measures and methods to have harmonized approaches on this. And further on, what can be observed now is that some of the member states come up with national laws on level 3 and level 4 systems. So we have to acknowledge there are different speeds. Some member states are lagging behind or prohibiting certain technologies. And this should be definitely set into a new frame of communication and commitments and strategy. So hands-on actors and industry have a clearer picture on opportunities, market opportunities in Europe. For the topic of mutual recognition of test approvals, for instance, again, I think we have to overcome fragmented mindsets in the member states, also on the technologies, and also I believe the trust among the member states is of utmost importance when the methodologies that, for instance, are proposed by the FAME should come into real life. Another aspect, and we are discussing intensively also in the CCAM partnership for sure, are the funding instruments. We strive for having an accelerated market access and deployment, and the current funding instruments are not really fitting in terms of height of the budgets and the time to grant times, and this does not fit into the competitive world we are now in, and this is a big discussion. Not only for the next framework program after Horizon Europe, but also for the next 2-3 years, as mentioned in the action plan. And I'm really appreciating if we will find, together with the European Commission, flexible ways of finding appropriate budgets for the corridors, for the regulatory sandbeds, etc. I mean, it's not easy, I know, because we have quite strict funding schemes and rules, but I think we have to free us from some of these strict constructs, so to say. When we look internationally, I think they are much faster in these research-driven activities, and budget is a huge topic in Europe. Okay, and well, it's also important to mention that regulation is not the only barrier for the deployment of connected automated vehicles. We have many other topics like other horizontal regulation, like on data, AI, trade policy, chips and software, as I mentioned before. I think this has to be considered definitely when we come up with new strategies. And as a summary, and this will be a bit my story. I mean, if we look on the other continents, we should start learning a little bit from them, moving from a regulation first to an innovation first approach, not 100%, but take possible elements out of that, so that our solutions in Europe can be developed in freedom, so to say, and being in the end globally competitive in the long term. And therefore, again, more innovation-friendly testing environments with a clear impact and collaboration with authorities is urgently needed. Because the industry knowledge in Europe is extremely high, we have real big assets in safety and validation methodologies, and basically we should be in the first line to balance safety, market opportunities, and these topics together with the road safety authorities. So this would be my initial input for the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Christian, for this long wish list of what should be improved in order to allow the actual deployment of these technologies in the open road. I think it's quite clear that one of the main challenges that you identify is this harmonization within the EU, especially with regards to the use of the vehicles in the open road. And I think that one of the examples of harmonization that we can use as a good point is the homologation framework, in which, as it has been explained before, we have harmonized regulations in the European Union, and also there are some other bodies like the UNECE where this harmonization is also being used. No? And for example, we have this work on the ADS regulation, in which this work in the informal working group on ADS, in which the final result will be a UN regulation that will be applicable for all those countries which are contracting parties of the 58 agreement, but also it will end as a GTR, as a global technical regulation that can be used as a technical reference for other regions. So I wanted to ask Maria Cristina about the development of these of the activities in this working group, in the informal working group on ADS. I would like to know from your perspective if you see that the work is aligned with the strategy of the European Union, if this will be a valuable tool for the European Union, and also in terms of worldwide harmonization, if you see that this will be an opportunity so that the regulations worldwide will be quite aligned and it will be helpful for the manufacturers.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you, Cristina, also for the very interesting presentation. Concerning the work ongoing at the United Nations level, I think you're right on all points. The aim is exactly to have two regulations, so UNR and GTR, twinning, at least for the technical requirement side. Of course, there will be administrative procedures that are different. On one side, we have type approval. On the other side, we have self-certification. But what is happening is that due to the complexity of these systems and to the novelty of this technology, indeed, the two approaches are a bit merging somewhere in between type approval and self-certification. So the end result will bring some elements of indeed the checks before market introduction, merged also with some monitoring after market introduction. And so in that sense, indeed, we'll have something that will facilitate harmonization at global level from both type approval side and self-certification side. And concerning indeed the progress of work, I think we can be quite optimistic. So the collaboration and the pace of the work has been indeed very good so far. And the Commission, as you know, is one of the co-leaders of the informal working group dedicated to the drafting of the technical rules. And at the same time, there is also another group of experts developing the administrative procedures for the two regulations under the GRBA workshops. The plan would be basically in May to merge the work of the ADS informal working group together with the work from the GRBA workshop and have indeed the first consolidated text for both UNR and GTR. And there will be indeed again online meetings for sure in May. Possibly also we are discussing about having an additional online meeting in June, but for sure there will be an in-person meeting in July. And this will lead us a bit to a preparation of the draft to be submitted for information to the GRBA session in September, and then prepare for the official submission for endorsement by GRBA towards the end of October. And this would hopefully bring us to respect the deadline that you mentioned, to have the both ADS, UNR and GTR adopted at the WP29 session in June 2026. So the planning, the timing is very ambitious, but as I said, the work is proceeding quickly and well with very good collaboration from all the parties involved. And of course, also very good support from industry and the other stakeholders that is also worth mentioning. So everyone is working, I would say, on time sheets to make this happen. And of course, this will facilitate also what I mentioned, moving to unlimited series approval. What we are doing at the European level is to move forward also with updating and upgrading our EU text, so that in case there will be issues with the global regulations, at least we are indeed able to move forward at least at European level. And just to mention that, anyway, our regulatory text at European level mirrors the approaches being developed and drafted at UN level, and so we will be fully aligned in any case. Thank you.
Okay, so you have confirmed my assumption. No, this is a real nice example of harmonization and also of hard work, which may lead to this reduction of the gaps between the different approaches that are followed in the different regions. And that leads me back to Christian. You mentioned before that we should or that we should look at what other regions are doing, because in some other regions the ecosystem may be more supportive to the deployment of these technologies, or maybe helping foster the technology in terms of R&D. Do you have some more details on that? Which is your point of view of what is being done in other regions like the USA or China, which are normally the other regions which are compared to the European Union when it comes into connected and automated vehicles?
Yes. I mean, I have another slide on that, but to answer quickly to that one, yeah, I would also be interested on Maria Cristina's idea or opinion about the situation in China, where basically there's an attempt to follow the UNECE or GTR, but we observe a certain delay and opening a big window for innovators in China. And so this is what we basically also in a more consistent and extreme way see in the United States, that basically apart from some guidelines, innovators have well, a big freedom to develop their systems with some pros and cons for sure. Yeah, and China might be a little bit in between Europe and the United States. But yeah, this would be a little bit my outlook and question. What do we expect regarding harmonization of in the course of GTR in China?
So if I may, Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. The big advantage of having twin UNR and GTR regulations would be to have a real global harmonization. At the same time, as you mentioned, there are different speed concerning the deployment of innovation. So in those countries, following a self-certification scheme, of course, that as you mentioned, facilitates the fast access to the market of innovative technologies, with pros and cons. So as you mentioned, the pros is, of course, technology is immediately available to the users. The cons, I think we can hear some of the news coming from across the ocean, at least. And in that regard, indeed, China being a bit more careful, most probably. So allowing innovation, but in specific frameworks. And now we understood that indeed this was also updated to reflect an increased level of safety that was required by the government. So in that sense, indeed, they are also carefully moving forward. And as far as we understood from the exchanges also at United Nations level, this problem of fragmentation is a bit common to all the players. So also in US, the approach is quite scattered across the states. So there are different local regulations at city level or at state level. Some states give complete freedom, others have indeed the ordinance or regulations in place that have to be respected, even if now we can observe quite possibly or expect quite a deregulation move or approach from what we can hear lately in US. And in China is a bit on the other side. So we understood that indeed they are very actively working on the GTR. They are also very actively setting up frameworks for testing and deployment in different cities, in many cities, also linked with connectivity. There is also something that at European level we miss and we want to incorporate in our strategy. And they also have to face harmonization at their national level, because also across China they have different approaches and different speed, locally speaking. But of course, deploying in or having testing and deployment frameworks in 20 cities, not like having in 2 or 3 cities. So the scale and the numbers are indeed different. That's why basically we also wanted to speed up the commercial deployment, setting up these test beds that are mentioned in the action plan. And in that sense, we are replicating a bit the vertical deployment that we see is happening in US and China. So the deployment of new technologies is happening faster there at commercial level because it was immediately allowed, but it's not happening at large scale yet. So we cannot see large scale anywhere. And this is due probably not just because of the fragmentation at national level or at local level, but this is also due to the difficulty, the complexity of the technology and of scaling up these geofenced applications in some cases. On the other side, I think we have to work hard at European level and make sure that we start with 3 test beds and the associated regulatory sandboxes. But meanwhile, all the harmonization and building the single market takes place in Europe, which will take years. We are also ready to move forward with more locations for vertical deployment. So hopefully this will be just a start, and then lesson learned can be exported and used in many other locations across Europe.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Okay. Very nice explanation about how we compare to our not so close neighbors, but neighbors at the end. I would like to move into the specific topic of the open road testing and the rules and regulations that are required to allow the open road testing of connected and automated vehicles, because I think there is a very interesting concept that has been proposed by the European Commission with these test beds for these tests. And I think that one of the key elements of these test beds is that they will be cross-border test beds. And I would like to ask Christian, which is the relevance or which is the importance for you as a manufacturer to be able to test your vehicles for development and for validation in different environments, including several countries or several regions which may have different traffic rules. So which is this important for you, and how these test beds can help you reach these goals?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we, as many of you might know, we have introduced in the US and in Germany level 2 hands-free systems and level 3 up to 60 kph on motorways in Germany, and yeah, potentially we could based on the exemptions we got from the TCMV, we could potentially roll out these systems in further European countries, at least for the level 2 hands-free system. And this would come with an intensive testing in each member state before we bring our systems to the customer. So, and the efforts to do so are quite high, as you can imagine. It's based on our requirements, internal requirements on the safety of the systems, and well, and then if we would go for enlargement or extension of this this market offer, we would have to, well, kind of get a local or a national tick in a box kind of approval, I don't know. And if then again we would faced by huge requirements on showing evidences, although this has been already shown in one member state of Germany, and although we have many internal evidences, then it comes to some critical situation, and cost-wise it's not attractive anymore, because we all know that the technology itself, it's quite expensive. And then if on top we will have additional requirements, and from my feeling now it's getting more and more requirements, then the European single market is just not there from my point of view. So we would need to have a system a lean system of mutual recognition of these systems when one or two major member states have approved the system already in their countries. Then we would appreciate having a much more leaner and streamlined process to be able to deploy these systems across Europe.
Okay, yeah, well, at the end, I think that one of the proposals from FAME project, from the task that we have been leading, is with regards to this harmonization, or at least the mutual recognition of these permits. And this is something that has also been taken into account in the subgroup for homologation testing from the Motor Vehicle Working Group. But at the end, as per today in the European Union, the competencies for traffic rules belong to each different member state, and in some cases even to the regional governments. I'd like to ask Maria Cristina, which is the tools that the European Union has in order to try to align or try to harmonize the different regulations from the different member states in terms of traffic, so that we can reach, or that we can get closer to the demands of the industry.
Thank you, Carlos, for the very interesting and very difficult question. Because indeed, as you mentioned, this is under member state responsibility. So in that case, the Commission doesn't have mandate yet to regulate at European level. Nevertheless, we already established since a couple of years a framework with member states to have an informal exchange. We supported member states in exchanging their own expertise, in particular the member states that are a bit more advanced on updating their national rules and legislation to fit driving automation. To bring example indeed on how this process of updating the national rules can happen, and what they did, and what could be also indeed used as inspiration and as useful hints by other member states. So that was a bit the start of our contribution to the harmonization there. But of course, we understood that something more is needed. That's why, regardless DG GROW being responsible for regulating the type approval, so that the vehicle, the technology, we understood that that was not enough. So on the paper, we have European harmonization, European type approval, allowing vehicles to go everywhere. In practice, as Cristina explained, that's not enough to make sure that the technology can circulate across Europe. So we start our work more in practice, issuing these guidelines for testing that you mentioned, with the contribution of the FAME project and all the stakeholders involved. And we are now working on finding an agreement to establish a common way to tackle the European type approval to be effectively European. So to possibly involve member states from different countries or local authorities from different cities where we want to see the deployment happening. So how should this EU type approval be issued in a way that it is immediately recognized also by the other member states involved? And then we also plan to do a similar work on the next phase, that will be the deployment. Because again, type approval on paper, you can drive everywhere in Europe, as for European drivers. In practice, then there is a second phase, transport licensing at national and local level, that implies some other steps, other possible testing or dialogues with local authorities and so on and so forth. And we want to avoid that this becomes a second type approval, because type approval was already granted. We understand the need to check some specific aspects, especially on the operational path chosen, for example, in specific city, if there are interoperability aspects to be ensured specific to the city or specific to the country. But then we should not indeed exceed what is reasonable, what can be reasonable to ensure deployment. And so we will also issue some guidance on how to do that. And then we plan to have the same approach on many other aspects that are relevant to the deployment. And this, again, is a soft law approach, but will bring us in the end to see if that's enough to ensure harmonization, or rather regulatory actions are needed at European level. And for traffic rules, of course, as you rightly mentioned, member states and sometimes local authorities, they have responsibility for that, and there are differences. We do not have frameworks that are 100% different, and they are most likely like 10% different from one another. So there is a large base of 80 to 90% of common aspects. So this is already a start, and if we identify that as a priority with the stakeholders in our working group, we can also invest efforts and time to deliver something in that direction. So to try and harmonize only for the driving automation part, this remaining 10%, and deliver something, some guidance, for example, to start with at European level. So that's a bit the plan to start with, and it will not be unilateral Commission decision, but again, we'll listen to the request, and we also use the input of all the stakeholders who are willing to contribute. So we have DG GROW, we have the expert group, motor vehicle working group, ACB subgroup, where indeed all stakeholders, together with regulators, of course, are invited to participate and to contribute. And under this ACB subgroup, we have several subgroups working in parallel on all the aspects that I mentioned, plus, of course, the regulatory side. So as you see, we are a bit overloaded, but the Commission is committed to tackle all these aspects that are mentioned, not just in the action plan, but then more in details to make sure that the deployment can happen smoothly also in Europe.
Okay, thank you, Maria Cristina. Well, I think we are reaching to the end of the time. I had like hundreds of additional questions in my mind, but I would like to at least read the question that we have in the Q&A. We have still 1 minute, so enough time. I see that the audience is quite shy today, so we only have one question, which is related to the role of the digital infrastructure, more specifically the mobile communication networks in testing and deploying automated vehicles at the scale, and if there will be some consideration in the regulations with regards to this digital infrastructure.
So on my side, I can say that we do not have that yet, because our regulation from the DG GROW side relates to the type approval of the vehicles, not of the infrastructure. But we are in discussion with the DG MOVE colleagues to understand what we can do more, because we understand that this is an important aspect, not really for allowing automation, because we see automation is happening without the mandatory link with the infrastructure or connectivity with the vehicle to X connectivity. On the other side, we see that this is indeed a strength from a European perspective that could be brought to another level. And so if we invest and facilitate all on these aspects, probably we can reach very, very good results at European level.
Okay. Christian, I don't know if you want to add something on the importance of connectivity and infrastructure.
Yes, basically I fully agree on what Cristina was saying. From the industry side, I think we need clearly to look into the potential overlapping benefits of the digital infrastructure. What really are the most important elements that can help connected automated vehicles having a better performance. Then the second step would be really to create some work and standardization groups to set up the standards and interfaces. And while the third aspect would be to have a harmonized and common build up of this infrastructure, because it doesn't help if one or two countries have very good speed limit signage on motorways with functional safety and so on and so forth. And if you go cross border, you have nothing. So from a European market perspective, this would not be sufficient. It would be a starting point, but not sufficient in the end.
Okay, so I think that we are already out of time. So I think there are some other questions that may have been left. In any case, I think that the FAME team will be happy to receive these questions, and if possible, we will reply them offline. So that being said, I would like to thank Maria Cristina and Christian for their participation today. Not only for the participation, but for the very, very active participation and for the very interesting information that they have shared. And also thank you to all the audience for being here during this intense hour of discussion. And I hope to see you all soon in the next CCAM talk. So thank you very much and have a nice day.